Hey everyone, I'm Vichi. I'm one of the co-founders of Rural Opportunity Institute, and we believe in a trauma-responsive, healthy, and thriving rural Eastern North Carolina. I first came to Eastern North Carolina as a high school teacher, and it's been one of the greatest honors of my life to get to know the people and the history of this place. One of the towns in our community, Princeville, was the first town in America to be incorporated by freed black slaves after the Civil War. The children I taught and the people I now serve come from a long legacy of strength and resilience, and yet they face incredible challenges. Just as one example, if you look at this map that shows median household income across the country, Eastern North Carolina in the green circle is part of a swath of communities across the rural South that struggle the most. Pull up this other map of heart disease, and you notice a really similar pattern. At first glance, you might think this is because the people here make bad choices, or they're just unlucky. But if you dig deeper, you'll realize that's entirely not the case. This map from 1860 shows the population of slaves across the rural South. And what always strikes me is that this pattern looks almost identical to the maps I just showed you. What that tells us is that the challenges that communities like rural Eastern North Carolina face are rooted in systems and institutions that were constructed centuries ago during a time of slavery and whose vestiges still persist in our systems today. We created Rural Opportunity Institute to confront this reality and imagine a different reality. We bring together government agencies and community members to actually talk about how it is that our public institutions continue to perpetuate historical trauma and inequity. We work to actually change practices to be less punitive and more healing. And finally, we look to support people who are in the process of healing to stay connected to pathways of school, work, and wealth building. In the last 2 years, we've been able to bring together over 3,000 people across sectors like schools, health, law enforcement, justice, faith, and community to begin to have these conversations. And what people overwhelmingly describe is a mindset shift. Those who've long felt pain at the hands of the system say they finally feel hope because they're no longer being blamed for the challenges they've experienced. And those who are part of our most punitive systems are starting to take responsibility and admit that we need to do something different. Law enforcement and schools were named by many community members as the most punitive systems that we have, and the leaders of these systems have started to acknowledge the same. So in the last year, we've been working with each of them to begin to redesign what spaces like the jail or what experiences like suspension or expulsion can look like to, instead of punishing and isolating people, actually provide opportunities for healing and connection. Building on that positive momentum, we're super excited to share that we're raising $250,000 to launch the first iteration of the ROI Accelerator next year. Unlike traditional accelerators, we're going super deep and focusing on government institutions and working to provide them with support around design thinking to begin to redesign policy and practice to be healing instead of punitive. Not only will this embed healing practices in institutions that are going to long outlive many of us, but also we hope that the insights will generalize to other communities across the South that face a similar history and similar challenges. We got a really strong team around this. My co-founder and I both have been trained both in trauma-responsive practices, but also in design thinking out here in the Bay from the firms IDEO and Frog. And then we have a dope community accountability board that brings wisdom, relationships, trust, and all of that's going to hold us accountable to doing what's best for our community. So if you're interested in talking more specifically about the accelerator, would love to chat later. And I hope that you will join me in shining a light on Eastern North Carolina and helping us imagine what compassionate, supportive, and accountable rural institutions can look like. Thank you.